On the set of Love and Hip Hop, Atlanta, it was meant to be just another day. As they set up the cameras, adjusted the lighting, and practiced their lines, the cast and crew were getting ready for another dramatic filming session. However, nobody was aware that something unexpected was going to happen on this specific day. Something so startling and intensely personal that it would leave everyone in the room speechless. Drama is the currency that keeps viewers interested in reality TV. Supporters are accustomed to furious disputes, treachery, and violent altercations. However, it was more than simply TV drama this time. It dealt with actual life, actual suffering, and a truth that had been suppressed for too long. Resilience was the foundation of the well-known rapper and longtime Love and hip-hop performer Lil Scrappy's reputation. He had fought personal demons in front of the world, gotten by in the competitive music industry, and survived the tough streets. As he battled with love, family, and his job, fans have been there to support him. However, there was another side to his existence that had remained hidden behind the cameras, beyond the meticulously manicured image of a reality TV star. As usual, the studio was bustling with staff members going about their daily business and cast members chatting. One woman, however, stood apart and had a distinctly different demeanor. She wasn't getting ready for a performance. She wasn't giggling or chatting with the others about anything. Rather, she remained motionless, her body stiff, her face concerned. She has been Lil Scrappy's helper for years, running his business, scheduling, and ensuring that everything in his life went without a hitch. She was invisible to most people and only existed in Scrappy's universe as a background character. She would not, however, remain in the background today. She inhaled deeply and moved forward. Even if the room didn't instantly get quiet, her closest friends and family knew something wasn't right. Then she said something. "This is the first time I've spoken it. However, the truth must now be revealed." Her voice was powerful but gentle, full of resolve, but shaking with emotion. A few people looked around. As more individuals became aware of the change in ambience, the typical background chatter of the set started to diminish. Her remarks were significant. She went on, straining to maintain her composure. "I've kept this to myself for a long time. However, I can no longer conceal it. People need to know what happened." There was utter stillness in the room. Everyone halted their activities. Uncertain of what lay ahead, crew members exchanged glances. Having grown accustomed to stage drama, the cast members now felt that this was something else entirely. This was real. A few of them had a sneaking suspicion. Knowing that whatever she was going to say would alter everything, others braced themselves. She took a moment to collect her thoughts and closed her eyes. Then she uttered the words that would shake the set with a quiet intensity. "There once was a Scrappy. He injured me physically. He lost control when he was intoxicated. And it happened more than once. It occurred more than once." The room went cold. Time seemed to have stopped altogether. No one responded for a second. Her words echoed in the astonished hush, hanging heavy in the air. While some stood still, trying to take in what they had just heard, others gasped. This dispute wasn't your typical Love and hip-hop dispute. This wasn't a fabricated storyline for ratings. This was real. Her eyes filled with unused tears, but she didn't let them fall. She had carried this weight for too long, and now that she was finally speaking out, she wasn't going to stop. "I didn't want to say anything. I didn't want to hurt him," she admitted, her voice cracking. "But it wasn't right. No one should have to go through that, especially not in the name of loyalty." The tension in the room was unbearable. Some cast members shifted uncomfortably, while others looked down, avoiding eye contact. Those who had been seeing glimpses of Scrappy's temper before now struggled with the reality of what she was saying. To steady herself, she inhaled deeply before continuing. On some evenings, he would return home after having a drink, and his rage would already be out of control. "I never knew what would set him off. It was like walking on eggshells." She paused, as if reliving those painful nights in her mind. "He didn't know his own strength," she remarked gently. "I know he didn't mean to hurt me, but when he was drunk, it was like he became someone else. Someone I didn't recognize." A murmur spread through the room. Some cast members whispered among themselves, trying to make sense of the revelation. Others looked at her with a mixture of sympathy and shock. This wasn't the Lil Scrappy they knew, or at least, not the version of him they had seen. But for her, this had been her reality for years. A reality she had suffered in silence. As she continued to speak, the weight of her words began to settle in. "I told myself repeatedly that it would end, that he would be different, that it was just the alcohol. But it kept happening." Even if her voice faltered, she persisted. "I spent a lot of time blaming myself. I wondered if I had done something incorrectly. Perhaps I set him off. However, I now understand I wasn't at fault, and I will no longer remain silent. The reality of what she was saying was undeniable. This was no longer about reality TV or scripted drama. This was about abuse. The room, once filled with casual conversation and the usual pre-show excitement, now felt suffocatingly still. Some people avoided looking at her, while others had tears in their eyes. Scrappy himself wasn't there, but his presence, or rather, the weight of the accusations against him, was felt in every corner of the room. For a long period, no one spoke. No one knew what to say. Then, one of the crew members cleared their throat, disturbing the stillness. "Did you ever tell anyone?" Someone finally asked. She gave a head shake. "No, I was afraid. I didn't want to harm his career. I didn't want people to turn against him. But I can't keep shielding him at my own expense." At that moment, it was clear there was no turning back. The facts were out. The world would now have to deal with it. The room was suffocatingly quiet. Nobody made a move. Nobody said anything. With the weight of the assistant's comments bearing down on everyone in attendance, it seemed as though time had stopped. She had revealed a fact that had been suppressed for far too long by speaking her truth at last. However, once the words were spoken, they couldn't be taken back. Tension now permeated the studio atmosphere, which had before been charged with the typical enthusiasm of a love and hip-hop shoot. Everyone was waiting for the next moment to come, waiting for someone to answer. The hush was ultimately broken by one of the producers. "Are you implying that Scrappy mistreated people physically?" The question was heavy and purposeful as it hovered in the air. The helper took a deep breath. Her voice no longer trembled as she responded, "Yes." With the certainty of someone who has been suppressing their anguish for too long, it was suddenly steady and firm. "I was the one who suffered when he overindulged in alcohol and lost control." Cast members and crew began to whisper to one another. Some averted their gazes, uneasy with the disclosure. Others gazed at her with a mixture of incredulity, amazement, and sympathy on their faces. They had never seen this side of Scrappy, or maybe they had decided to ignore it. Did anybody else find out? From the rear of the room, a voice inquired. After hesitating, the assistant responded. Some people had suspicions, she acknowledged. They witnessed how he behaved while intoxicated and how his rage erupted over nothing. However, nobody ever inquired. I also didn't tell. She looked around the room and inhaled deeply. I kept him safe for years. He was stressed, I told myself. For him, I made excuses. To be honest, though, I was afraid. His career wasn't something I wanted to damage. I didn't want to be the cause of his defection. After years of knowing Scrappy, one of the other cast members shook her head. We've all witnessed Scrappy lose his temper. He's always been irritable. However, she stopped and turned to face the helper. Why now? Why are you speaking up at this time? The helper didn't recoil. Because I can't continue to live in fear, as it wasn't a single night. It occurred more than once. Additionally, I am aware that I am not alone. There was silence among the gathering. The room shivered at those final words. You mean there were other people? The producer inquired. The assistant paused, as though he was unsure of how much to divulge. I'm not positive, she acknowledged. However, I'm aware that I wasn't the only one who noticed his rage. Not just I was worried about what he may do if he lost control. Like an ominous storm, the weight of her words descended upon the room. A few of the actors exchanged glances, their faces inscrutable. What comes next? At last, a different voice inquired. As though anticipating this query, the assistant let out a sigh. She was honest when she said, I don't know. However, I am aware that my silence is over. The atmosphere on set changed as people began to comprehend what had just transpired. Unsure of what to do, a few of the crew members quietly moved aside. The actors, who typically jumped right into contentious debates, were unusually quiet. This was something more serious and genuine than just another reality TV scandal. Then the side door opened for the first time since the assistant had spoken. Someone entered. Lil Scrappy. The room became really tense. A shiver of uneasiness ran through the gathering just by his presence. He had no smile on his face. He wasn't kidding. He appeared grave, more grave than anyone had ever seen him. He glanced around the room and found the helper. At last, he added, I heard what you said, in a composed, although emotionally charged voice. I must speak with you. The assistant looked up at him, her face unreadable. Scrappy, there is nothing else to discuss. I expressed what I had to say. Scrappy shook his head and muttered, "No." A lot was spoken by you. You didn't say everything, though. All were holding their breath. Now was the time. Nobody had anticipated the encounter, but now nobody could avoid it. With a lowered voice, Scrappy moved closer. "I never wanted to hurt you, you know that." The assistant's mouth tightened. "It doesn't alter the fact that you did, though." Quietness, heady, unbreakable. Then, without warning, Scrappy muttered something. "I have to share my perspective." The room waited to see what would happen next. It was a wake-up call when Lil Scrappy's aide broke her silence, not simply another reality TV controversy. In the entertainment world, abuse is all too frequently concealed beneath the glitz and disregarded until it becomes too significant to ignore. The moment's weight felt oppressive. By speaking her mind, the assistant had revealed a side of the entertainment industry that was buried beneath its glitz and glamour. The whole room was frozen in expectation, though, as Lil Scrappy stood in front of her. Everyone was aware that this was a turning point for the whole cast and crew of Love and Hip Hop, not just Scrappy and his helper. Scrappy reiterated, "I need to tell my side of the story," in a more measured, lower voice. The assistant's expression was unreadable as she gazed at him. "Your side?" She repeated, her voice a mixture of shock and fatigue. "Scrappy, sides aren't relevant here. This is about the truth." Scrappy rubbed his face and let out a quick exhale. "You think I don't know that?" he said, his tone faltering a little. "You think I don't sit with this every single day? I know I messed up, but—" He hesitated, at a loss for words. "I never meant to hurt you like that." There was a whisper among the actors and crew. Some appeared surprised that Scrappy wasn't refuting the accusations right away. Others remained doubtful, awaiting his level of willingness to acknowledge his past. The helper folded her arms. Her voice was firm and unyielding as she said, "You hurt me repeatedly, even though you never meant to. And every time, I told myself it wouldn't happen again. That you'd be better. That you'd change." For a moment, Scrappy closed his eyes and took a deep breath. He opened them, and his eyes met hers. "I was drunk, man. I was out of control. I'm not trying to make excuses, but I was going through a lot. The pressure, the expectations, everything, it got to me." The worker nodded. A few heads in the crowd nodded silently in agreement as the speaker said, "We all go through things, Scrappy. But not everyone takes their pain out on the people closest to them." Scrappy's jaw tensed, and it appeared as though he could snap. But then there was a change in his expression. When he spoke again, his voice was different, softer, almost broken, and his shoulders drooped a little. "I don't even recognize that version of me," he said frankly. "But I can't change the past. All I can do is own up to it." The assistant examined him intently, as though attempting to ascertain the sincerity of his statements. "Then own up to it," she pushed back. "Publicly." Scrappy's eyes grew a little wide. She nodded and said, "You want me to say it on camera. You did this in secret, but I had to deal with it every day. If you truly mean what you're saying, then take responsibility for it. You created your career in the spotlight. Allow people to see you for who you are, flaws and all." Scrappy remained silent for a while. There was too much tension in the room. Finally, though, he nodded slowly. The studio was filled with gasps as people said, "I'll do it." A few of the producers exchanged shocked glances. This was something unvarnished and authentic. It wasn't your typical reality TV drama. "Are you serious?" Still doubtful, the assistant questioned. Scrappy gave another nod. The assistant's shoulders relaxed a little as she sighed, saying, "Yeah, I have to face this. I owe it to you. I owe it to myself." Whispering, "Then I hope you mean it," she whispered, "because once this is out there, there's no going back." The days that followed were hectic. In an exclusive conversation, Scrappy acknowledged his past transgressions and conveyed his sincere contrition for them. He acknowledged that his worst actions were motivated by drinking and that he had caused irreversible harm to those he loved. He received support from certain admirers who praised his integrity and readiness to accept responsibility. Others disagreed, claiming it was a planned attempt to save his career. After years of bearing the burden of silence, the assistant decided to leave the spotlight and give herself a chance to recover. She had no regrets about speaking up. She believed that by sharing her story, others who had endured silent suffering would feel less alone and more empowered. However, Scrappy's path to salvation was just getting started. Would he really change? Would he revert to his old behaviors or make genuine progress towards recovery? Time would tell. The truth was out, and there was no going back. That much was certain. If this tale struck a chord with you, realize that you are not alone if you or someone you know is being abused. There is assistance available. Your voice counts. You also deserve to be heard, just like the assistant did. Let's carry on this discussion. How do you feel about Scrappy's answer? Do you think that deeds speak louder than words, or do you think that second chances are possible? Leave a comment below with your opinions. The truth always surfaces eventually, even if fame obscures it.